This project was created for the AP Summer Institute, and it involves the application of 4-level geographic analysis with some additional emphasis on the concept of regions. Our story is taking place in Victoria on Vancouver Island in BC. It's a very pretty city. Here's the Inner Harbour and Beacon Hill Park, two of the typical examples of this attractiveness, which draws in a lot of tourists every year and encourages a lot of people to make Victoria their home. And our story in particular does take place in Beacon Hill Park. This is the area of Beacon Hill Park. It's just a little ways short of downtown, 10-minute walk. Here's downtown kind of up here. Just a short walk or bike ride away. The park is very large, 750,000 square meters or about 200 acres. It has attractive formal ponds and gardens, large playing fields like the cricket field here, as well as some more kind of natural habitats, trees and long grass, that kind of thing. And it may look peaceful, but there's currently a lot of tension in the park, unfortunately, and that is what our story is going to be about. The level 1 analysis, it really is just talking about what is happening and where and when and the scale. So what's happening, the what is this tent city, for want of a better word, a homeless encampment going on in the park. When I went, I counted 15 to 20 tents, although, as I'm going to talk about shortly, they're quite well hidden, so it's not easy to see them. A local newspaper mentioned or thought there were about 100 people regularly sleeping out in the park. Level 2 analysis goes on to look at the type of pattern that exists, kind of describing the distribution of the phenomenon. So as I mentioned, maybe there's a few dozen perhaps, including ones I didn't see, tents around, about 100 people, and they're quite dispersed throughout the park. There have been in recent years so-called tent cities in Victoria, where the campers have all been clustered together, but these one, or this example, they're all kind of dispersed throughout. In fact, often quite hidden in the long grass or around the trees. Also, probably on this level 2 analysis, students could go into more detail in looking at the region concept, such as that discussed by Kevin Lynch in this book here, The Image of the City. It's from 1960, and he dives deeply into the idea of regions, looking at districts, the boundaries, the paths, the nodes, the landmarks, and students may dive into these as well. In this particular example, the district, obviously there's the park, Beacon Hill Park, but the kind of layered on top of that is this tent camping or tent city, even though it is quite evenly or dispersed, diluted throughout the park. In terms of boundaries, like this tent here, we can see that they're often tightly hidden in amongst the existing natural features like trees or long grass over here. And obviously this is, they want to be kind of out of the way, they want to be inconspicuous as much as possible, so that probably explains that. In terms of nodes, a central kind of meeting point or point where different paths cross over. A good example from here would be the toilet block, where most people who are camping are going to have to go to at least a couple of times a day probably. So that's a kind of a meeting point there. And if there was a landmark, there's a large flagpole and a kind of open space near that, which I'm going to mention again in a short while. So level 2 analysis is about the kind of the pattern. Level 3 analysis is about the explanation, why it exists and why there. There's a long answer to this, but in short, it's to do with, or one of the main reasons is to do with the supply of social housing, like public government provided housing, and affordable market housing, whether that's to buy or to rent. A little research I did here. In 2019, average cost for a condo in the city was $430,000, while rent for a 2-bedroom apartment was over $1,700, and that had gone up by 73% over the preceding decade. Another group called the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives estimated that people would need to earn in the region of 28 Canadian dollars per hour over 40-hour working week in order to afford accommodation on their own. However, the BC minimum wage in 2019 anyway was $12.65. It has gone up, and it is scheduled to go up again by 2021 up to around or somewhere over $15, but still not enough in order for people to be able to afford the housing. The Victoria Foundation estimates that there are around 1,500 homeless people in Victoria, 1/3 of whom are who identify as Indigenous First Nations. Another factor at the current time is the COVID-19 pandemic, and because of this, the City of Victoria has relaxed their normal bylaws, which means that people are allowed to camp in city parks without removing their tents. Ordinarily, they can be there, they call it sheltering, they can be there between 8 p.m. and 7 a.m., but then they have to remove the accommodation every day. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the City of Victoria has relaxed that bylaw. So that has contributed certainly towards this current. Next up, level 4 analysis considers questions like, what's the impact of this and how might it be kind of managed? As you can imagine, this tent city has caused some discord in the city. This is a sign from the City of Victoria, and you can see that camping is prohibited in this particular area. So certain areas of the park have been designated as no-go areas, either for ecological reasons or because they're culturally important to the local First Nations. There's some irony, remember that 1/3 of the homeless people are identifying as Indigenous, but this is one of the reasons why some areas are out of bounds. So this is a little bone of contention. It's an issue for some of the campers. They believe that the city is trying to kind of move them on, and they complain that there's conflicting information, different maps saying that they can camp there or they can't camp there. So that's from the city. There's also tensions with the local residents. You can see a tower block in the background here, close to the camp, or one of the campsites. Many local residents are not happy that their park is being despoiled. It's been some of the land is being taken up by the campers where they would normally engage in recreation and so on. And from the campers' perspective, they complain that they have received some animosity, some foul language and physical abuse from the local residents. Another complaint from the local residents is that illegal activities are happening and are being tolerated around the campsites. So this last picture is not actually my picture, but this was a story in recent days that the police raided a so-called chop shop. So a number of bikes had been stolen, and there was a little area in the park where these bikes were being chopped, different parts of bikes being kind of put together to disguise the fact that they were stolen, and then they were maybe being sold on somewhere else. So those are all the kind of level 4 things about looking at the issues and so on. Another part of it is kind of thinking about how it might be resolved going forward. I happened to come across a meeting, and this is the landmark I was mentioning earlier, the large flagpole. I didn't take the picture of the flagpole or the totem pole, but these are at a prominent site at the top of the hill, actually looking over to the USA, to the Olympic Mountains over the Juan de Fuca Strait. And this happened upon this gathering of the campers and some of the advocates, those who did not camp, but they were kind of supportive, bringing the campers water, helping them to negotiate with the city and so on. So at this meeting, they were a little bit suspicious of me as an outsider, but once I explained I was a geographer, they were fine to let me observe. So I heard about a number of the complaints that I've mentioned already. They were feeling like they were getting conflicting messages from the city, that they were experiencing some abuse from the local residents, and they also had some things that they wished to improve their lot. So they wanted the toilets to be kept open 24 hours a day. They wanted the city to provide some shower facilities for them as well, so they could stay clean and so on. So I was hearing a lot about that, and I guess they were trying to put their message forward to provide a united front in their discussions with the media and local government. Unfortunately, there was a lot of strong characters, and the meeting kind of descended a little bit into chaos, but I was able to hear a lot of useful information from there. And then the last part of the level 4 analysis is just kind of predicting what could or what should happen in the future. It's a difficult game. I'd imagine that the situation would continue throughout the summer while the weather is okay and COVID-19 is still causing mischief. But longer term, it's probably not sustainable, ideal for either the campers or the city or the local residents. But what the solution is not easy and it's not quick. We're talking about more affordable housing, perhaps more social housing. We're talking about higher wages. We're talking about support for those who are homeless to transition into employment and transition into the housing there. So these things are not easy, but this was a nice little picture to finish off. If we have some love, then that's a good starting point. Thanks.